Whipple Family Misadventures Book 1. Welcome to the Parent of an Alien Hedgehog Club, Chapter 14. Sonic looked deeply disappointed when he opened the front door and only found one hedgehog waiting with Wade on the other side, not two.
How come Shadow can't come too?
He's got something else he's going to do tonight.
Tom said, coming up behind his kid.
Hi guys, come on in.
Hey, Silver?
Wade gently caught Silver before he went inside and knelt down so he wasn't towering above him.
I still expect you to behave, even when I'm not around. I don't want to hear any stories about you not listening or misbehaving. Understand?
The gray hedgehog nodded and then threw one of his arms around Wade's neck, the other still clutching his plush toy protectively.
Is Shadow in trouble? No.
Wade said, hugging him back and then standing up.
Don't worry about Shadow. You guys have fun.
The two humans watched as Sonic all but dragged Silver towards the stairs leading up to the attic, both of them already chattering away.
So, how bad is it?
Wade grimaced.
He is not from another planet like they are. Some human scientists created him, and that guy, who's the man he wanted me to find for him, is dead. Also, he died over 40 years ago, and Shadow's been in suspended animation for almost 5 decades, and he has no idea.
Another day, the look on Tom's face would have been laughable, something he would have teased him about later on. But today, it was just a reminder that no matter how weird any of them thought their lives could get, it wasn't stopping now.
I don't know what to tell you, but wow. Created him? But how?
I don't know, but it's not going to be an easy conversation. And thank you so much for letting Silver stay the night. You and Maddie have been so helpful to me these last few weeks. If there's anything I can do in return, please let me know.
If I think of something, I'll tell you.
Wade was sweating bullets, thinking about the conversation ahead of him. The worst part was Shadow had no idea. The hedgehog was just going about his day, completely oblivious to the news that was about to come crashing down on his head. The hardest part was trying to figure out the best time and how to deliver this life-changing news. By the time Wade had finished cooking dinner, he still hadn't figured out how he was going to say it. With a sigh, he sat down at the table, spooning food onto his plate.
So what did you want to talk about?
Shadow suddenly asked. Freezing in place, Wade blinked twice. He had been hoping to do this later, not in the middle of dinner.
Let's finish eating first.
Is it important?
A little bit.
Then we should talk about it now.
Huffing, Wade ate a spoonful of food, chewing and swallowing before he answered.
Let's finish eating first.
He repeated, mostly because he was sure what he was going to say would disrupt everything else, and these types of conversations should never be held on an empty stomach. Transferring his scowl from Wade down to his plate, Shadow slowly took a bite of the food and then another one.
It's quiet without Silver.
It is. Do you miss him?
Wade took another bite.
Maybe a little.
That made Wade smile.
That's okay. I miss him a little bit too. This is the first time he's been gone ever since he moved in here.
How long was he here before I showed up?
Not that long, just over a week. It was pretty startling for me how you showed up almost right after him.
Watching the food on his plate disappear was almost painful, knowing what was coming. As soon as he was done eating, Wade got up and went to start tidying up the kitchen, trying to get his thoughts in order to think of the best way to say this. He turned around and found Shadow behind him, holding his empty plate, which he offered up.
What did you want to tell me?
There was no escaping it anymore.
Why don't we sit down for this?
Wade said softly and returned to the dining room table, sitting down and waited until Shadow was as well.
Buddy, I have some bad news for you. That Robotnik guy isn't coming here. He can't. He's dead.
Shadow didn't even blink. Those red eyes only remained focused on him.
What?
He died. And he didn't die recently. I'm really sorry, but he died over 40 years ago.
That
Shadow shook his head.
doesn't make any sense. That's older than you.
I know. That's because you were with him in the late 1960s. And then when you went to that pod thing for a while,
How do you know about that?
I found some more stuff out about you when I was looking for Gerald Robotnik.
Wade said, knowing he would have to explain more about that at a later point.
That pod, it put you into a state of a suspended animation, meaning you didn't age or grow, and you were inside it for over 50 years. And during that time, Robotnik passed away.
There was a long silence as Shadow opened his mouth, shut it, and then looked away. Wade watched as a lot of emotions filtered over Shadow's face, as it looked like he was struggling to digest the news.
You're wrong.
Shadow's voice was barely audible and he slid off the chair.
You're wrong or you're lying to me.
Wade fished out his phone, unlocked it, and then showed him the screen so he could see for himself.
I'm not, see? This shows the time, day, month, and year. It can't be changed or adjusted.
When he didn't get an answer, Wade reached out to put a hand on his shoulder.
Shadow, I am so sorry.
The dark hedgehog jerked away.
No, he can't be dead.
His voice started to rise with fear, disbelief, and touches of panic coloring his tone.
He can't be dead. It's not over yet. He said I was going to be the ultimate life form. I haven't finished that yet.
I know you didn't.
Shadow's fingers started to flex and twitch.
He died? He died, and I'm in the future. He died and left me in the future alone. Suspended animation. That... You said I didn't age or grow.
Wade slowly nodded.
But that morning, when I was recovering in the lab after the... He said I had to do it. He made me go into that pod. He said it was very important and that I needed to do it for him. I didn't want to go in there.
Turning back to look at Wade, there was a sheen of tears building up in Shadow's eyes.
Did he get rid of me?
Wade's heart dropped. Shadow's expression switched to one of shock and disbelief.
He got rid of me.
Wade stopped, unsure on how to answer that. On one hand, this guy was dead. There was no need to try and salvage anything. And from what he had heard so far, it wasn't like this Robotnik guy hadn't been very nice to begin with. It wasn't as if he had much of a reputation left to uphold. Along with that, the reason why he did it was because the military had been coming for Shadow, something that was still a very real threat to them here and now. While Green Hills was mostly safe, it was still something they had to be concerned about in some capacity, and Wade didn't want either him or Silver being terrified that soldiers might kick their door in at any point and capture them both. Both answers were going to be painful. It became a question of which would do the most harm.
I don't know, but I do.
He never got to finish that thought. Shadow's arm swept out, sending the dining room chair clattering to the floor. Worse, he seemed so upset and distraught, he barely seemed to know nor how it made Wade jump.
Why would he do that?
He demanded as tears started streaking down his muzzle. He kept swiping at his eyes, but they kept coming. He looked like he was desperately trying to hold back the dam of emotions, but was failing more with every second. Shocked, Wade could only watch. He wanted desperately to help, but he was becoming worried for his own safety. He did not know how strong this little hedgehog was. Truly aggravated as he was right now, Wade didn't want to find out if he was capable of causing actual and extreme harm, even if he didn't mean to. But beyond that, he wasn't sure how he was supposed to help. Try and offer comfort and hope Shadow did misdirect his pain and misery towards him? Let it run its course? Shadow didn't seem to be the type who wanted comfort from a hug or anything like that. But beyond that, if he just watched, would Shadow then feel as if he had been left to suffer alone? Quickly, Wade decided on a middle-of-the-road approach, still trying to de-escalate, attempting to remember how to help someone through a meltdown.
That sounds really upsetting and scary for you.
He said I was really important.
And you felt good because you were really important?
When Shadow turned around again, this time he looked at him and nodded. For a second, it looked like he was going to be alright, and then the anger was back.
But he lied. I wasn't important. I never was. I believed him, but he lied.
Red energy started gathering around Shadow's body, getting brighter and denser with every word.
He got rid of me.
On that last word, it shot out in every direction like a shockwave, sending the toppled kitchen chair flying into the wall and knocking Wade completely off his feet. By some miracle, he had managed not to hit his head, instead landing on his back like a turtle. Groaning, Wade rolled to his side. For a long moment, they both just stared at each other, in equal parts horrified and astonished. Finally, a strangled noise escaped from the dark hedgehog before he turned and fled. Later on, Wade was a little bit glad that Shadow had not been clearly thinking when he took off. If he had been in a better state of mind, he may have ran for either the front or back door, and if he had, he would probably have been down the street and long gone before Wade could even think of chasing him down. But Shadow wasn't, and instead went down the hall, past the bedrooms, and into the garage. There were only two ways out of the garage, the door leading to the hallway and through the large door, with the device that controlled it far above Shadow's reach. Groaning again, Wade managed to get up. Nothing felt broken or serious, but he was still going to feel that in the morning. Taking a shuddering breath to steady himself, he followed after the dark hedgehog. Ever since his garage had been turned into a storage for all the stuff that had formerly been housed in what was now Silver's bedroom, it was now full of hiding places, especially for a hedgehog that was the size of a human toddler.
Shadow?
Wade called out softly, flipping on the light. It would have taken Wade a lot longer to find him if he hadn't still been extremely upset. He heard him, shuddering gasps and whimpers that led him to the back, where he found Shadow tucked against the back wall behind several boxes. For the first time, Wade appreciated how well named he was. In the dark, the hedgehog almost wouldn't have been visible.
You want to come out?
Wade coaxed as he moved the boxes away. In response, Shadow turned a tear-streaked face toward him, bared his teeth, and snapped at him, although it seemed more like an automatic reflex. An attempt at a snarl was made, although it was far too wet and choked to sound threatening.
Hey, none of that. Now come on out. I'm not hurt, nor am I mad.
The hurt part was a bit of a lie. He did expect to find some bruises later, along with being sore for a while, but he would keep that to himself.
Come on out.
It looked like he wasn't going to, was just going to stay hidden there. Then Shadow slowly crawled out. Suddenly, Wade had a black hedgehog slumped against him, softly sobbing.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
The raging storm was gone. All that was left was a distraught, frightened child. Relief surged as Wade sighed, hoping that the worst was over. Gently, he stroked the top of Shadow's head.
I know you are. And I know what you're feeling is really bad and scary. And I don't understand how you feel. But you don't have to go through it alone. I promise.
He waited for a moment for the trembling hedgehog to say something.
Shadow?
The fact that he had red pupils combined with now his eyes were red-ringed from crying gave him a very strange and eerie look. The hedgehog didn't move, only remained heavily leaning against him.
You know,
Wade slowly shifted to get up, taking Shadow into his arms as he stood. A second later, he realized that might not have been welcome, but the hedgehog only seemed to sink into his shoulder instead of fighting it.
sometimes it's good to sleep on stuff, because when you're tired, everything seems way worse. We can keep talking about this in the morning, okay?
He got Shadow a glass of water and then carried him towards the bedroom and tucked him into bed.
You'll feel better in the morning. For now, you're safe, and it's okay. Everything will be alright. Just rest now.
Another time, it would have been comical how fast the dark hedgehog fell asleep. But for now, it was just worrying. Shutting off the light, Wade shut the door and returned to the living room. The chair was still smashed against the wall, For a second, Wade thought about trying to see if it could be salvaged, and then decided to leave that for later. For now, he just added more wood to the stove, checking the doors were locked, and then retired to his own bedroom. Letting out a deep sigh, he flopped over on his bed. Wade stared at the ceiling and went through his breathing exercises, wondering if he was getting in over his head. He honestly had to put off his own feelings of anxiety and general being freaked out aside, and now it was all coming back. Was this too much to handle? Once he was fully calmed down and grounded, Wade got up and paced down the hallway and then back, thinking about how he was going to move forward. Unlike with Silver, where he agonized over the decision for days, the answer came to him right away. Shadow was already settled in for living here. Wade was used to alien hedgehogs. They had a room for him, and he and Silver mostly got along. He was on his way to being friends with Sonic, and so far, Wade hadn't had a lot of issues with him yet. In fact, if anything, Shadow trusted him, at least a little bit. While that conversation they just had did have a very rough spot, overall, Wade didn't feel like it had been a complete failure, and that he'd been able to get things back under control. Wade would have bet anything part of that reaction was due to the fact that Shadow thought that he had nowhere else to go, that he was truly alone in this strange, confusing place. If there was ever a kid who needed a home, a place to feel safe and secure, and a family to love and care about him, it was Shadow. When Wade got up the next morning, he was surprised to find that Shadow was still asleep. Usually either he or Silver were up before him, or at least around the same time. Yawning, Wade went to make himself some coffee and toast before he sat down at the table. He was sore and moving stiffly this morning from last night. The house was so quiet, in a way that it hadn't been for weeks. Wade found it lonely. It was hard to believe that just a few weeks ago, his house had been like this all the time. That he had to turn the TV on, or music so he wasn't still listening to the sound of nothing. While the occasional peace and quiet was nice, returning to that sounded awful. Wade's breakfast was gone and his coffee mug was nearly empty when he heard the sounds of footsteps behind him. He turned to see Shadow in the hallway, clearly reluctant to come over.
Hey, Shadow.
Wade said and pulled out another one of the dining room chairs.
You want something for breakfast?
When Shadow didn't move, Wade offered what he hoped was a reassuring smile.
I'm not mad. Come on, you have to eat something.
Slowly, the hedgehog crept over and climbed up onto the chair Silver usually sat in. It was amusing. No one had been assigned where to sit. It just happened as all of them just decided this one is mine. Thankfully, the chairs had come in a set of 4, so they had enough for 3 of them, but would need another one eventually.
How did you sleep?
Fine.
Okay.
Finishing the last drops of coffee, Wade put the mug down.
How do you feel this morning?
I'm feeling a lot.
That was an interesting answer, but also a pretty honest one.
Can you tell me more about it? I want to help, but I can't read your mind. You have to talk to me, and then we can work on it together.
The silence that followed was difficult, but Wade waited patiently.
He's dead and I won't be the ultimate life form. And I don't like that. But also, if he's gone, I don't know what to do next, or where to go, or anything.
Wade nodded.
Yeah, that would be pretty scary. But that's something I wanted to talk to you about. Would you like to stay here?
Stay here like with you and Silver?
Sure.
The hedgehog thought about that and then folded in on himself.
I don't think I can.
Why not?
A cloud of pure misery came over him.
Because I hurt you. And I don't even know how I did it. But I hurt you, and I don't know if Silver even wants me to stay either.
First of all, don't push your expectations onto other people. Both Sonic and Silver were wondering why you weren't with them last night. They wanted you to be there as well. You can be a bit rough and blunt sometimes, but I honestly don't think either of them dislikes you.
Really?
Yes. And second, I want you to listen because this is important. You heard me by accident. It's going to happen again. I'm probably going to do it. I might step on yours or Silver's feet or accidentally knee one of you in the face, or I might bump into a stranger or whatever. It happens. What's important is when you hurt someone, intentionally or not, you apologize, help fix anything that needs fixing, and move on.
When Shadow didn't say anything, Wade exhaled.
What would help you feel better about that?
Shadow thought for a moment.
You could do the same back to me.
No, absolutely not. Because then it wouldn't be an accident. It would be on purpose. And I don't want to be the kind of person who hurts others on purpose, especially kids.
He pondered for a moment, suspecting that part of the problem was guilt.
But if it helps you feel better, then no dessert for a few days, alright?
Then maybe he'd feel like he had paid for his crimes. The dark hedgehog nodded twice.
However, there is something I do want to talk to you about. Have you ever bitten anyone?
When he got a tiny nod, Wade set his jaw.
Okay, you have snarled at me like you were going to bite me 3 times now, and Silver said you attempted to bite him. That is absolutely not okay. You cannot bite anyone or even threaten to bite anyone. It has to stop now.
Wade wasn't afraid that Shadow would bite him or even Silver. He was worried that a random person would bump into Shadow and he would snarl at them or worse, and then instantly be thought of as a danger to everyone in town. After all, Wade knew firsthand what happened to dogs after they bitten a human. But not that he wanted to tell the hedgehog that. Shadow blinked.
Okay.
I am very serious. You will be in a lot of trouble if it happens again.
Why do you care?
Wade became baffled.
Because if you bite someone, like another human who isn't me, a lot of bad things could happen to you, and I might not be able to save you from that happening.
Why would you care?
Shadow repeated. He sounded tired and drained.
Why are you doing all of this for me?
Wade opened his mouth to answer and then slowly shut, trying to think of an answer. Of all the times for his mind to go completely blank, now wasn't a good one. But he wasn't sure how to explain why people did kind or good things for others. Why he looked at this little framed hedgehog and thought about how, in almost a week, he only smiled once, and how much Wade wanted him to feel safe enough to always feel that way. Because when Shadow was melting down, shaking with fear and sobbing because he felt completely alone, confused and helpless, it only made the man want to fix it even more.
Because humans will pack a bond with anything, and when they see someone who's clearly lost without a family, they'll adopt that person into their family.
Shadow thought about that, frowning.
Is that what I am now? Part of your family?
If you want to be, but that's up to you.
He nodded.
I'm sorry about the chair.
Wade was just about to say it was fine and then caught himself. While he wasn't mad about it, it was not fine to go throwing furniture around.
I'm not upset, and I forgive you, but do not do that again. And I want you to help me either fix it or break it down for firewood.
He folded both hands on top of the table.
Anything else you want to talk about?
There was a long silence that Wade was starting to wonder if Shadow was ignoring that, or if he just didn't want to speak anymore. The black hedgehog frowned, his face becoming troubled.
I don't know what my purpose is anymore.
What?
When Shadow looked back up at him, there was clear unhappiness written in his features.
He told me, the professor, he said I'd be the ultimate life form. That at first I was going to be used to cure diseases, and I'd do battle training and do amazing stuff. He said that was my purpose, but I didn't. That wasn't my purpose. And I don't know what I'm supposed to do now.
Wade swallowed deeply, unsure on how to answer. The hedgehog wore an expression that clearly suggested that Wade, as an adult, would have the answer. It had never occurred to him, yet those adults were just making everything up as they went along.
Well, honestly, I'm not sure.
The hedgehog's expression dropped.
But the reason why I don't know is because it's your life, not mine. I can't tell you how to live your life.
Couldn't you give me a new purpose?
I could, but it wouldn't really help.
Why not?
Well, think about it this way. Let's say I said your purpose was to race cars, but you found out you hated doing that. Wouldn't that just make you feel worse? If you spent time and effort on something you dislike doing? And for what?
Oh,
But if you really want to have one, then your purpose can be being part of a family and learning. At least for now. You and Silver both have a lot to learn about living on Earth and catching up on the education you should have gotten already. Do you know how to read?
When Shadow ducked his head, that gave him his answer.
I didn't think so. I already planned to help Silver with that, and you can be a part of it. Focus on that.
The hedgehog looked doubtful but slowly nodded.
that is one purpose.
Sure is, pal.
Wade ruffled his ears again and then looked up at the time. There was more he personally wanted to discuss, but Shadow was getting a glassy-eyed look that suggested he was getting worn out on this conversation and needed a break.
How about you get some food, and then after I get dressed and take care of a few things, you can come with me to go pick up your brother.
But I don't have a brother.
Well, you do now.
Wade said with a smile.